Hi, my name is Rochelle Ignacio and I'm a Black settler living on Treaty 6 territory. I think that for me it's important that we start with a land acknowledgement because we need to recognize that we're existing here on stolen land, and for so long the dominant society and culture has and continues to still reject Indigenous ways of life, cultures, and traditions. So I also feel that that is very symbolic of how marginalized communities such as my own community are treated here in Alberta. I grew up in a small town in Alberta and there was about 7,000 people at the time, and we were the only Black family that were residents there. So my first feeling that I was an other was around kindergarten, and I came home from school and I asked my mom, why are the palms of my hands and feet white and the rest of my skin is dark, but my friends all have the same color of skin? And then in grade 3, I also recall we had crazy hair day, and I asked my mom for Bantu knots, and I just thought, it's something different that I didn't go to school in. I didn't think a big deal about it, but when I got to school, I was bullied on the playground, but kids had pipe cleaners, green hair, mohawks. My friends were there when this bullying was occurring, and they reacted kind of in my defense. And the school, they responded by giving us all an after-school suspension where we had to write on an essay on what we would do differently. And that kind of crushed me because I didn't feel that I did anything. I didn't really commit a crime other than participating in Crazy Hair Day with all the other kids. By junior high is when I was experiencing more overt forms of racism, and I was called the N-word on the basketball court during lunch hour. And I didn't know who to turn to, so I talked to my brother, and my brother, he was friends with that kid's older brother, and I don't know, they had some type of discussion, and I didn't have a problem with that kid going forward. And I don't know, I just think that a lot of my story is feeling like I was different, but then that's all I knew growing up, so not knowing really how to navigate that. And I think one thing that they teach us here is that we're so great because we celebrate multiculturalism, and we have this mosaic society, and it's so superior to that of our friends down south in the States. But I never felt that my differences were really celebrated. I felt that I was an other. I had to change who I was depending on what situation I found myself in. So I guess something else that I've started to unpack as an adult is, we think about Michelle Obama, and she says, when they go low, we go high, or she talks about this notion of we have to work twice as hard, be smarter. And while that wasn't blatantly discussed at the dinner table growing up, I felt that there was always this pressure, and when I speak with my peers, they had that same type of pressure where we had to outperform in school, we had to outperform in our extracurricular activities. And so I grew up with all these extra rules imposed on me, and I couldn't ever understand where they were from, but as I grow older, I realized my parents were really trying to protect me. So my parents emigrated here in the 1980s from Trinidad, and we were really lucky, so every few years we get to go back and vacation in Trinidad, but there's always that adjustment period for us. So they have a type of sing-song dialect there, and for a few days I wouldn't be able to understand people, and I would think they were laughing at me, but really they were just saying, oh, she can't understand what we're saying. Yeah, they spoke English as well. And by the time that adjustment period ended, I felt like it was always time for me to go back home. What would happen is I'd come back home, and my friends who were all white, they would see pictures and they would say, that looks amazing, I want to come. But I never had a way of explaining to them why I didn't want to bring them. And it's because I didn't know how to explain that they would feel uncomfortable and they would be the only person who's white there, and they would feel different. In my experiences, it didn't matter if it was a white person who was living in Trinidad or a tourist. They were the only white person, and people would stop, like in a room, in the mall, on the street, and they would stare. So I never wanted to subject my friends to that. So this is probably getting towards when I'm in my 20s, and I feel that I never belonged in my hometown, and I wanted, honestly, to escape and just go as far away as possible. And I ended up going to Toronto to go away to school. I would go back to my parents' home island, and I didn't feel like I belonged there because I never lived there. And my sister and I started traveling around the States, and we planned this trip to New York. We were so excited, and we were lucky. My aunt said we could come stay with her in Brooklyn. So we immediately hit the streets, and we were walking, and within an hour, I would say even less than that, these uncles across the street, they were calling out, asking us where we were from. So we stopped and we said, how do you know we're not from here? And they're like, well, the way you carry yourselves, your clothes, the way you're walking. And then when we started conversing, they said we had Canadian accents. And so this place, which is historically Black, we felt maybe we'd have some type of connection there. And we just felt that there was really no place of belonging. We didn't know where our people were. And we really had to start curating that. I would say around this time is when I really started to live for myself and really doing things that mattered to me. And that included selecting people who I wanted to be friends with, whether we had the same values, we liked the same experiences. So when I talk about values, I'm thinking, do we treat people with respect and dignity? Do we have similar experiences where we want to learn about cultures and people's life experiences? Do we have a sense of volunteerism and giving back in some way to some type of community? And when I talk about experiences, I started doing things that I wanted to do. So snowboarding and camping every weekend. I started backpacking when I was around 25. And you would always get people that would say, oh, you backpack? Oh, you snowboard? And like, so what? At the end of the day, I did it because I wanted to do it. I did it because that's what made me feel at home and comfortable and like I was having fun and having a good time. I find that it's really important that you find your people and you do the experiences that you want to do. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is or what your life experience is. If you have the means, if you have the will, go out and try new things because you never know what you're going to like to do and you'll never know who you would meet along that adventure. I remember I started going to Black History Month events and I came back from one event and I really was struggling to explain what I was feeling. And it was about how I felt like I was searching for this Black identity, and I didn't understand why suddenly I was feeling such a strong connection to it. And my mom took what I struggled to say and she eloquently paraphrased, and I felt really understood finally, but she said, you know, it's not that you're suddenly have this identity, it's always been there for you, and you're becoming more aware of it and you're growing into it. And I don't know if that's because she had the same struggles or she watched other people or maybe she's just that wise, but it was amazing to feel so understood when you were still struggling with what you were actually feeling. I also joined a new company in Edmonton and I was relatively new, but I was like, what are we gonna do for Black History Month here? And the answer is nothing. So I helped to arrange a potluck lunch for the Afro-Caribbean peers to get together. And that started morphing into us occasionally meeting up. And slowly I started implanting like questions because I work in the field of equity, diversity, inclusion, but you know, what's your career development goals? Talk about your personal stories. And so we got to know each other on both a personal and professional level. And I don't think anyone realizes the impact of such spaces, especially in the workplace, unless you put yourself in there where you're in with a group of people who you feel comfortable with. And one example I can share with you is one of my colleagues, he really became very emotional and he was expressing his gratitude, and he said that there was never a space in an organization where he felt so comfortable and he could be authentic and just be his true self. At the same time, we had this new network within the company, and there was only a handful of us, maybe 8, but we had people that we could go to in finance or business applications, and they might not know the answer to our question, but they could help guide us on our way in a much more productive and efficient fashion than if we hadn't taken that time to get to know one another. I would say that 2020 was a really challenging and difficult time for the world, but especially for my community, because anti-Black racism was being talked about in open spaces like never before. And while it felt free and liberating to be like, yes, this is how I felt growing up, it was also emotionally tolling and taxing. And so I started having these conversations with my friends, and it was, over Zoom because we were isolating, or maybe it was just in a park. And then I also started being invited into these circles and spaces that traditionally I felt I never belonged. And I started meeting new people and realizing that so many of our story is the same, in that we don't know who our true identity is, or we feel like we don't fit in certain places. And someone comes across as being super confident, and to realize that they're going through those same struggles, it just makes you feel so human, and it makes you feel so much more connected than you did before. And I would say that part of what has happened, which is really beautiful, but for someone that's trying to find their identity through this, it could be overwhelming. Which group do you go to? What cause do you support? What are you doing with your time? How are you investing or reinvesting in your community? And so for me, I was fortunate to be one of the co-founders of a group called Black Owned Market. And the way we give back is we're trying to create generational wealth and economic opportunities for our community. So we plan these pop-up markets for Black entrepreneurs, businesses, and vendors. And the general public can come learn about their story, their brand, hopefully engage, do some consumer transactions and buy their product or services. And there is that identity piece there for me always. And whenever I have this feeling of self-doubt, am I the right person to be doing this? There's someone, it could be a staff member, it could be a vendor. We've had national partners reach out and they're like, hey, this is amazing, we want to work with you, how can we support? I remember over November, when you're doing something like this and you're trying to do it in a pandemic, there's all sorts of challenges involved, but we had to cancel our physical market and shift everything online because of the pandemic. And one of our vendors said to us, you generated sales that wouldn't have existed, and thank you so much to your team for doing that. And it's always those moments where you feel like an imposter, you feel like you're not the right person to be doing that work, that someone comes and reinforces the value. And I think that that's part of my story is, I've been trying to find my identity. I'm still navigating and looking for it in a lot of ways. But I think that when we really look at diversity, and it could be diversity of skill set, it could be diversity of thought or opinion or experiences, but we take all of those differences and we put them together and just start working in a collaborative fashion, there's just so much good, and the possibilities are really endless. So that's my story. Thank you.